Hello, everyone. Everyone, if you are in the sides, please come inside. We're about to get the program started, and we have a bunch of seats up front. I'm sure you want to get a close-up look of my very sweaty face. I apologize for the heat, but we have some fans coming in. My name is Sarah Fisher. I am Axios' media correspondent. I cover all things media, tech, sports, and we're here today to talk about the combination of all three of those things. We are so grateful to our partners at IBM for making this possible. We've been doing a lot of great events with them around fandom and the experience. Just a reminder for everybody here, if you want to subscribe to my newsletter or any other newsletters at Axios, just go to axios.com/newsletters. And with that, let's get the program started. The woman who I'm about to introduce is somebody who, if you are a DC native, really needs no introduction. Danita is the president of DC United, which is a very impressive role. She was the first black female president of any major MLS club, which is so impressive. Danita, please come welcome us on stage. Danita Johnson, thank you. So for those of you who might not be aware, Danita and I just did this rodeo in France at a big advertising conference. And in that conversation, one of the things that we discussed was that what's changed in DC is that we went from having mostly casual fans and some avid fans of DC United to now having a lot of avid fans, as well as a lot of casual fans. When you look at the makeup of DC United and your ticket sales, is it mostly recurring customers, season ticket holders, or is it mostly some of casual fans? How is it shifting?
Yeah, I think, hi everybody, welcome. For us, our fans, we have a core base that's been with us. So we talk about our 96ers that have been there since the very beginning. Us being one of the founding clubs in Major League Soccer really plays into that. What's fun right now for us is it's kind of we have our second generation. So we have our 96ers with us, and then we have those that their parents were our fans, and now they're ingrained with us, and they're part of our supporters and our larger season ticket base. When it comes to the casual fan piece, I think for us right now, it's really introducing people to the experience of Major League Soccer and what soccer is representing here in the United States. And our goal in that is that anybody can come out at any time, and as we talk about all are welcome, all are united, is really creating an amazing fan experience from beginning to end. It's something that we try to dial in on as an organization and try to uplift so that every fan, whether you know soccer in and out or you're new to the sport, you feel welcome within the space.
And then, so part of this magic of DC United is definitely that Audi Field. I mean, you have the beautiful view of the Capitol. What are the other things that you do to bring a casual fan in and to make them excited about it?
Yeah, we think about what our pregame events are. We're working on new shows that will come in prior to concerts on the plaza, lighting up Audi Drive. I think one of the other things we do is cross-selling when it comes to our casual fans. When we think about our tenants, the DC Defenders, the Washington Spirit, Power FC, which is part of the USL Super League. In addition, hosting events of all kind. For 5 years now, we're in our 5th season that we've been hosting the Truth and Service Classic, which is the Howard Hampton annual football game. We hosted Broccoli City in 2024. These are all things that help us integrate different communities into our ecosystem of Audi Field that creates opportunities for them to potentially cross over and be DC United fans in the near future.
This is a great time to be the president of a soccer club because the U.S., North America, is hosting the World Cup next year. What role will Audi Field and DC United play in that experience?
Yeah, well, part of our role is the preparation to that. As you all know, and if you don't know, Club World Cup is actively happening right now here in Washington, D.C., and we're hosting that at Audi Field. We actually have another match tomorrow at 3 p.m., shameless plug. So be sure to make your way to Audi and leave work early. It's a nice day. But our role in this is to help elevate the game. So Club World Cup is the caveat to that, leading into World Cup in 2026. As we're not a host city, we are the capital, right? And with that, we want to be the nation's capital of sport. So we'll be hosting watch parties and other special events at our stadium in 2026, so be on the lookout.
And then in terms of the World Cup, there are some folks that think this will be like the Olympics. They'll come and they'll tune in and then they'll drop off until 4 years later. There are others that are more optimistic that the World Cup coming to North America is going to bring fans in and keep and retain them. How are you estimating this is going to play out?
I think what it's going to help is really teach here locally and nationally star power. And I think what will happen after the World Cup is that they'll have their natural stars that they see from the World Cup, and then opportunities to then gravitate towards them in their home markets in the U.S. and throughout the world, which I think will help continue fandom. In 1994, when the World Cup was hosted here in the United States, that was then the birth of Major League Soccer, which came to be in 1996. So if a league can be birthed out of the first World Cup that was done here, well, not the first, but the World Cup that was done here in 94, I believe that growth can happen in the World Cup in 2026. And I think that's what's ahead, and I think it's sustainable growth for us as a league.
So let's talk about growth for DC United as a team. I think last year Forbes valued the club at $775 million, which is impressive because it was in, I think, just single-digit millions like 10 years before. What do you need to do between now and in a few years from now for you to become a unicorn, a billion-dollar franchise?
Oh, love this kind of question. I think for us, it's continued investment. And so what we look at, our footprint in D.C. and what we can do in that southwest area of D.C. from our stadium, from a stadium enhancements, we're actually opening a new lounge, the AV Lounge, this Saturday at Audi Field. So how we invest in our stadium is going to be a really big piece for us. And we've talked about some other additional projects. Hopefully we'll publicly be able to talk about them soon to enhance our overall facility. That will be a big piece in that. In addition, our investment in youth soccer through our DC United Academy is a big piece for us. I don't know if you guys have heard of MLS Next Pro, but that's an opportunity for us to help youth actually advocate to get them to the first team. And so I think growing our footprint there from an investment standpoint will be really big for us as we continue to amp up our evaluation.
And thinking about the infrastructure that you're talking about, right now there's a bill in front of the DC City Council around bringing the Commanders from Virginia into DC. What impact would that have on DC United if the Commanders were to move into Washington as well?
I think it's a positive impact. We get new neighbors, right? And I think it really goes into what the mayor is trying to do here in D.C., and that's to be the sports capital. And so our ability to have all of the major sports leagues right in the backyard of our community is going to be powerful. And so we're excited for them. We want to be good neighbors to them. I think for us, it helps us to showcase options, but also lets fans know that we're all here to stay. And we want everybody in this community to enjoy sport and make it easy and accessible.
So what advice would you give then to the Commanders as they're going through this process of trying to build a neighborhood and invest in a community? Because you went through those growing pains trying to build up Southwest.
I think part of my advice is to remember to preserve the community. It's so important that we give back to the communities when we go in and build these facilities in these neighborhoods. You often think about the people that were living within those neighborhoods and those communities. How are we creating job opportunities for them? How do we create access? Are our tickets priced so that it can actually go to a game? Right? What are we doing in the give back from that? So I think our community service projects, as each of the sports teams in our market, are absolutely critical and something that we all need to make sure that we're paying attention to and being engaged in.
When we think about DC United, it is not just the team, it is also Audi Field, and it's not just used for your games. You mentioned some of your partners. What is the brand value and equity of a stadium being in DC that as we think about the Commanders coming here, we might not consider? It's concerts, it's other sporting events. What else?
Yeah, it is just that. I mean, I think for us, being an outdoor facility with our grass fields, what we can offer from other football games, how we host Howard Hampton, what we can do from a soccer standpoint. We host USA Rugby, which will be here in July. I think it's adding variety and depth and option to consumers within the marketplace. So for us, it's focused on just continuing to make sure that each of you can look at your phone on a Saturday morning and like, what do I want to do in DC, and know that Audi Field is an option, right? And what are we producing from a facility standpoint? And that's what we want to do. And we want to curate programs. Some of our programs are where we do movies on the pitch, and it's the neighborhood, and they come and they bring their kids, they put their blankets out on the grass, and they watch a movie in the middle of summer. Not as hot as today, but it happens. Those are the types of things that are touch points for us. We do backpacking and other programs that are community driven. We work with our partner Innova, and we do blood drives within our facility. So for me, it's servicing and entertainment, and that's what we get to do with Audi.
When we spoke in Cannes, one of the things we talked about was that the MLS has a unique agreement with Apple to support all of your distribution rights here in the US through Apple's platform. This is very different from other major sports leagues. I think about what the NBA just struck across so many different linear channels and streaming networks. What is the benefit to being with just one? What is a challenge?
Yeah, I think the benefit to being with just one, it was a restabilization for us from a league perspective when it came to broadcast. What you see now is streamlined pre-game shows, content across the platform on one of the biggest, most accessible platforms in the world. So when we moved to Apple TV, what really it gave us was a global reach for the global game. And we knew that at that time with soccer, we can be seen anywhere. And we know how big this is around the world. So access was really a big piece for us in this. The hard part, right, you said, where the challenge is, as you see, the NFL is on like 20 different networks. I'm being a little extreme in the moment, but there's multiple networks that typically you have to find your Thursday night, your Sunday night, your Monday night. We're in one home. Now, what that does for us by not being in so many different homes, sometimes can be harder for a consumer to reach us. So what we need to do, and what we always advocate to do, is create easy points of entry, and in partnerships with like DirecTV and T-Mobile, creating opportunities for people to easily be able to access our games and continue to promote them.
And then what about off of the TV? How do you make sure that you can give the fan the digital experience on your phone? Are you guys like an app-heavy league? How would you say someone should follow DC United if they're not watching on TV?
Yeah, first go DCUnited.com, download our app, follow us on social, all the things. You can find us. We have them all the tools that make it easy and accessible. But we want to make sure that we can reach fans wherever they are. And I think we also do that through our community programming too, and through schools, and through the universities that we work with as well. But for us, it's really just making it as accessible. As much as we are on our phones, I just want to be right in your hand, right there with you, and that's what we try to do.
Okay, so we have just a few minutes left. You are a business leader in Washington. You're also a Washingtonian. What are the things within Washington sports that people should check out that aren't just DC United that make you excited?
Well, that's a good question. You know what I would say? I think we got to really support our college sports in the marketplace, right? Like, as a pro team, our future is in youth sports and what we're doing in the college athletic space. And the more that we can help uplift that, the better it is for the future of our players. One of our players, Jacob Morrell, played at GW here locally, and now he plays on our first team. To follow our players through our marketplace as they grow in their careers, I think is pretty powerful. So I would say a continued investment in youth sports and our college sports is where I really encourage you all to show up. Our youth need activity. And I know a lot of our programs got dissolved after COVID, and the more that we can invest in those spaces, the better opportunity we have to develop great athletes and great people.
I love that you talked about before access for the community, making sure that the tickets are priced so that anybody could enjoy. You are a very successful business leader, but at Axios, we like to end with one fun thing. What is a place that you love to go to eat or to shop in DC that is accessible, that anybody here in this room should check out, that only like a DC local would know?
Okay, so what's funny is this is probably my favorite neighborhood in DC.
Love that.
So I'm big on Union Market. This whole, I think it's just a great vibe. So I actually just went there like 2 days ago, and I'm going to say their name wrong. It's the Mexican spot inside the corridor that's over here. Is it like
El Presidente?
No, it's not El Presidente. It's in the little, it's like in the marketplace, but where the food hall is, somebody else knows what I'm talking about. It's like Mexicalo or something, but it's phenomenal. And a girl, yeah, yes, and it's right over there. There it is. And I'm telling you, as a girl that lived in LA for many years, it's pretty solid.
Don't sleep on DC's Mexican scene. Danita Johnson, so many great things. I love when you talked about people being loyal fans of the 96ers when the MLS first came here to DC. Also, you talking about how the 1994 World Cup is what really brought the 1996 MLS here. It gives me so much hope and excitement for what the 2026 World Cup could bring to soccer. You talked about this unity of the Commanders coming here being a good thing for everybody. And if you could give them any advice, you said invest in your community, keep those tickets priced very, very low. You talked about your new AV Lounge, which is coming up to make the DC fan experience better, but there are a lot of things that you're doing to make the DC fan experience better. Club concerts on the plaza. You talked about even doing blood drives with Inova to make sure that the space is utilized in a way that's really great for the community. It's really important to invest in youth.
Yes.
And I love that you mentioned GW, my alma mater, but investing in college programs. And then just one fun thing, definitely don't sleep on Union Market. How about a round of applause for Danita Johnson?
Thank you all.
All right, everybody, don't go anywhere because we have Chris Freitz, an old friend of mine, coming up to do a quick talk, and then I'll be back with Mark Ein, one of the new co-owners of the Commanders, to talk about what that means for that league. Let's talk soon.
Welcome to your View from the Top. I'm your host, Chris Freitz. Thank you all for coming here. Before we get started, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to our partners at IBM for making this whole evening possible and for all their support for the race series. In fact, in Miami, Axios and the race hosted an amazing event around the F1 Grand Prix that would not have been possible without the strong support of IBM. So thank you to the IBM team. And without further ado, I want to introduce our View from the Top guest. Vanessa Hunt is the General Manager for Technology for the Federal Market at IBM. Vanessa, welcome. So stoked to have you here.
Great to see you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So lots to talk about here, and I think being in F1, you have to talk about F1 racing, but that's not the only data-driven sport that you guys really provide a lot of data for. There's golf, there's tennis. So I wonder, kind of when you talk about all the fun things that people see you sponsor, how does that interact with the federal government? How do those partnerships work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the one main thing that we've really learned from our engagement in sports is really how to turn data and insights into action fast. If you think of Formula One, you have to take millions of data points and analyze them to make split-second decisions. If you think as a viewer at the US Open, or I don't know if you have the Masters app, Chris, all of the things that make that experience, that digital experience or that in-person experience, that enhance that experience for you, are all driven by AI and hybrid cloud technology. So we can apply that same technology to different industries, including the federal government.
That's amazing. And I wonder then, why hasn't this transformation happened faster at the federal government level?
Right.
Kind of what are you doing to change that?
Right. Well, listen, I think more is happening than probably most people realize. I think every agency that we work with is on this digital journey, and they are looking at different ways that AI can impact and improve their outcomes and their mission. Some agencies are further along than others, of course. And I think what is also taking maybe a little bit longer, but is so valuable, is I think our federal government is really trying to lead in this area. They don't want to just do AI for AI's sake. They want to ensure that it's done the right way, that it has the right outcomes for them, that it's done in an ethical, transparent, open, and secure way. And that takes more time to think through.
So I think there's a lot of subjects on our audience's mind here, but I want to talk about one that's near and dear to my heart, which is like AI hype versus AI reality, right? Because there's so much noise in space. And I wonder, kind of, how are you making sure that AI delivers that value, right? That it's not just a flashy sponsorship.
Yeah, well, I think the key word there is exactly what you said, Chris, which is value. This is an area that IBM has been involved for decades. I think it was 2011 that Watson beat Jeopardy, the Jeopardy champ. So this was not new to us. But I think with the rise of more of the consumer level AI, things like ChatGPT, we did see a lot of excitement, right? I know my kids were really excited when they could put a picture of the dog that they customized onto their water bottle. There were those types of use cases that made people excited. There's also a lot of fear and concern, right, about how are we going to manage this and the implications of this on our government and on our businesses. I think where we've gotten now and where we certainly try to encourage our clients to get to is about exactly your point, value. There's a lot of things we can do. There's a lot of use cases that we can chase with great results. But how does an enterprise or the federal government actually get value out of this technology is a different question. And that should drive which use cases they focus on. And it really depends on what their mission is and what they're trying to achieve. in IBM, our CEO really pushed us towards value. He last year said to our leadership team, I believe in this technology. I think we need to apply it within our own company, and we can take out over $2 billion of bottom line productivity gains. We're now at already over $3.5 billion in productivity gains that we've seen just from applying this technology across our organization.
So huge value there.
Yes.
Are there any specific cases that you think are good for people to know about?
Absolutely. I mean, my favorite, because I interact with it every day, is what we've done in HR. So
wow.
we created a digital assistant that helps us with all of our HR work. And I will tell you, I was the first person to say, I don't really want to use this. I have an HR partner who I know will still help me. It wasn't until I realized that the experience of using this digital assistant was actually better for me. It helped me get things done more quickly. It helped me not have to go into each individual system. I was able to interact and get tasks done directly with the assistant, that I really saw the value of this technology. And what I love about that, too, is the same technology that helps you in that one part of the business and those processes in HR can be applied just as easily to other areas of the business, legal, finance. Again, back to seeing the value from what you invest in.
Right, and there's so many different ways to see that value. When you talk to your partners in the federal government, how do you talk to them about the value? Because there's so many different ways that it could be applied.
Yep. Well, I think I take a lesson, again, like I said, from our CEO. I think our clients really have to set the goal and the target. What is it their mission? What are they trying to improve? What efficiencies are they trying to gain? And really set a target of, this is what I want to see. And we can really quickly prove out now whether that can be effective or not. And by the way, it's not always. The importance there is speed. If you can within a month set up a POC and see that you're not going to get to that target, then we can pivot and figure out which use case we should be pursuing.
So it's a partnership. You kind of figure out what's going to work for those clients.
Absolutely, yes.
What is one thing people should know, since you're deeply enmeshed in AI, the hype versus the facts? What's one thing folks here should take away? Because we hear so much every day about how important AI is. What should they know?
Yep.
And how should they be thinking about it if they want to take it back to their organizations? How should they start to think about, well, how could AI help me? How could IBM help me?
Yeah, I think what people need to think about, and again, I think this is an area that IBM is really strong, is the governance piece. Really thinking through how you are going to manage AI within your organization, and that's an area that we can help. But I think in terms of what people should be excited about, it's that we're really just in our infancy on this journey. If you look at foundation models have been trained primarily 99% on public data. Now that's great, but what's the power that we can see when that's actually trained on enterprise data? Only 1% of these foundation models have been trained on enterprise data. What's the value we can unlock when we get those more specific targeted foundation models?
So when we have your data, and we're working with your organization's data, imagine the insights that we could drive and the efficiency we could drive and the speed
exactly
we could drive.
it.
Okay,
That's exactly it.
That's amazing.
Yes.
So we have just a couple minutes left, but
Yes.
I don't want to let you leave the stage here without asking kind of what's the most exciting thing
Yes.
that you see in AI right now? Where are we headed?
I love that question. I will say what is the most exciting for me is when we see this technology really power our clients' mission. And as I said, I see that every day with clients across the federal government. My favorite one is with the VA. We applied AI and automation technology towards their claims processing division. And as you can imagine, that's a hugely complex task, right? Billions of dollars being given out every year to millions of individuals. I think the manual that helps train people on all of the rules and regulations around claims at the VA is 5,000 pages long.
Oh, man.
So a really difficult task. We automated the claims processing and took it from an average claim taking 27 days to finalize to 24 hours. And the VA was able to take hundreds of their employees and repurpose them, refocus them on higher value work. So that was really great to see.
And not to mention that veterans now are being served
Exactly.
like infinitely faster,
Right.
27 days to a day.
Right, exactly. We talk at IBM about work that matters, and I can't think of much that matters more than us serving our veterans in a more effective and efficient way.
Well, we have to leave it there. Vanessa Hunt, thank you so much. Thank you to the team at
Chris.
IBM
Thank
for
you all
making
for
this
being
amazing
here.
event. Big hand
Thank
for
you.
Vanessa Hunt. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, stick around. We got one more before cocktail hour.
All right, everyone. Our next guest is somebody who sits at the epicenter of DC sports, business, and tech. And if I could have everyone quiet down a little bit, because this is a big newsy interview, and you're going to want to hear it. Mark Ein is a person who has been advocating for DC sports for decades at this point. Mark Ein served as co-chair of trying to bring the World Cup to the DC market in 2026. He advocated for bringing the Olympics to DC in 2024. He has investments in everything that you can imagine. He's dabbled in tennis and in esports. He owns the Washington City paper. But most importantly, he was a huge part of the new Commanders ownership group, and he's right now a huge advocate for bringing the Commanders into DC. So without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Mark Ein. All right, Mark, so I just teased this to the crowd, but you were part of the group that was advocating to bring the World Cup here. Why do you think we didn't get it?
Well, yeah, first of all, great to see everyone. This is an amazing venue. Thank you, Axios. I heard a rousing round of applause led by my two children over there, 7 and 10. So thank you guys for leading that. Well, I know why we didn't get it. As you said, I was co-chair of the effort to bring a World Cup game to DC after it had been awarded in North America. And we didn't get it because we didn't have a stadium. Our current stadium in PG County was at the end of its life. It wasn't FIFA compliant. No one was going to invest in it. This was before we took over the Commanders. And so FIFA made us bid with Baltimore. But the shame of it, Sarah, is that a plan was to have the National Fan Festival in Washington, D.C. The main fan festival for the World Cup next year is going to be here. 3 teams were going to be based here, play practice games here. And all of that was lost because we didn't have a stadium. And it's very unusual for the capital of a nation not to get a game. And we got to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Totally. Would you say that's why we didn't get the Olympics in '24?
I think that was part of it. I mean, again, we were one of the 4 finalists. It was Boston, San Francisco, LA, and us. It originally went to Boston and it went to LA. It was a bit about facilities. I think there were other issues there too, but certainly having a world-class stadium would be really helpful.
So clearly you're an advocate for bringing the Commanders here into Washington, D.C. The City Council is supposed to be voting about that on July 15th. If they don't vote, if they push the vote, or if they vote against it, what would you say is the plan B?
We're not talking about politics here. We're talking about F1 and other things. So I honestly can't. I'm not going to comment on that. Look, I think we have made a really compelling case for this. And what's interesting is, again, obviously having an NFL team in your city matters a lot. It drives a lot of economic activity. Uniquely, Washington, like we were talking about the World Cup and the Olympics, is one of the great cities in the world to host events, but you need to have a venue. You need to have a venue for it. And so when they had the press conference, Roger Goodell, there's no promises, but he talked about you certainly will be under consideration for Super Bowls. We're bringing the draft here. That will be that will be 1 million people will come for that. When we took over the team, we tried really hard. I was like, short of winning a Super Bowl, the biggest thing we could do is get Taylor Swift to come to Washington, D.C. And she wouldn't play our current stadium for a variety of reasons. But certainly when that happens the next time, you're going to be in line for that. And then talking about the World Cup, in 2031, the Women's World Cup is in America again. And again, no one's making any promises. I would think if we have a world-class facility, we're going to be in line to not just host games, but maybe host important games for that.
For a stadium like the Commanders, for something that size, it's not just about building the stadium, but I imagine it would be a very similar experience to what Danita went through with DC United and building out the infrastructure, the restaurants, housing. Do you expect this neighborhood to completely flip, or do you think it will be sort of like what RFK was, which is just a stadium and then the outlying neighborhood remains sort of uninvested?
It definitely will not be the latter. The plan is completely for it to be the former. And I think first of all, the master plan anticipates all of that. It also incorporates 30% open space and park space and space by the river, but then there's a whole master plan that includes housing of all levels, entertainment, all of that. And the world's changed a lot in the 30 years since RFK was there. This is the modern stadium experience. But the other thing about Washington, D.C. that we uniquely have is we have 3 examples of 3 stadiums that were built that transformed 3 communities. When I moved back to Washington in '92, I lived at Market Square at 7th and Pennsylvania. There was no Capital One Arena. There was the red light district. There was, people who were here, I see Larry Irving nodding his head. We remember what it was like down there. Capital One came in and literally completely opened the east end of Washington. Then the Nationals come. I remember what that was like. That was an industrial area. And now when you go down the freeway and you look to the right, it's the most extraordinary amount of new building. And then I'm very intimately familiar with DC United because I actually own the land under where the DC United Stadium was. It was a junkyard and a warehouse that hosted City Bikes, and I owned it. And I thought, this is incredible real estate, but my kids, who weren't even born at the time, someday they're going to get the benefit of this decision that I made. And all of a sudden, they said, no, let's build a soccer stadium here. There was an old Pepco plant, coal-fired power plant, that literally sounded like you were on the runway at Reagan when it was used 7 times a year, and a really unused bunch of real estate. The soccer stadium was built, and you can see how that's been transferred. So we have 3 examples of that. For sure, that's what will happen if RFK goes through.
So let's pivot now to something that is a passion of yours, which is tennis. You have a big sort of invested interest in the Rock Creek Park tennis center getting renovated. I think that a lot of people agree with you, but the question becomes, and by the way, you own a tennis tournament that plays there. The question becomes, who does that burden fall on? Does that, the National Park Service? Is it you? Is it the DC government? Who should be responsible for planning and paying for that renovation?
Yeah, honestly, we're so far from that conversation. We have no idea. The basic thing is, and this tournament is next month, and it's the Mubadala City DC Open. It's been part of our community since 1969. And what's interesting, the tournament was founded by a couple gentlemen in Washington, including Donald Dell, a sort of iconic guy. And Arthur Ashe was one of his clients, and he said, Arthur, I want to bring pro tennis to Washington. Will you be part of it? And Arthur said, I will be part of the tournament if you put it in a public facility, in a public park. Because in 1969, every tennis tournament, including the US Open, was at private clubs. And Arthur, that was not his vision. And so the reason that tournament is where it is in Rock Creek Park is because Arthur Ashe made it a condition of being involved in the tournament. And so we put the tournament was put there in 1969. When I was a little boy, I was a ball kid at that tournament, and it was on clay, and there were bleachers, and it was the highlight of my youth, going there, being close to the players. Obviously, I thought everyone in the stands was watching me, not the players playing tennis.
Of course.
But of course. And it's been part of my whole life, just like it has been for hundreds of thousands of Washingtonians. And if you go there today, in 1989, WTF, Washington State Education Foundation, privately raised the money to build a stadium, gave it to the National Park Service on the condition they would maintain it. If you go there today, you will see the maintaining part hasn't worked out so well. They don't have a lot of money. This isn't a priority. And so if you go to the facility, forget about the tournament, which is 1 week a year. The other 51 weeks of the year, this is a jewel of a facility in the middle of our nation's capital. People use it, but you can just go see it, and you'll see there is a need at some point to figure out how we get that in the shape. Not just that it's nice, but it should be a jewel for our community 52 weeks of a year.
I agree, and I hope that that gets fixed. You mentioned before the National Stadium. I think there's an understanding that now that there has been a change in the sort of regional sports network media distribution agreement with Baltimore, that maybe that could usher in a potential sale of the team. One of the folks that has been considered or rumored to be interested is Ted Leonsis. Monumental Sports owns the Capitals and the Wizards and a bunch of sports teams. My question for you is, if the Leonsises were to get or bid for the Nationals, is that a good thing? Because they've been big investors in the city, or would that be a monopoly?
Well, I don't think it's a monopoly. First of all, they're all friends of mine, the Lerners and Cohens and Ted, and I admire them all. You can't question the job the Lerners have done. That stadium is fantastic. The fan experience, I mean, they're real estate people. The quality of the fan experience, which is something I'm deeply passionate about, is really amazing. And they won us a World Series. So, like, they're great. And if they're the caretakers forever, we'll all be in good hands. Ted also, I think, has been a great owner. He's been a mentor and an inspiration for me in a lot of ways. And I do think there are benefits to having a bigger platform where you own more than one thing. And there's a lot of benefits, I think, for the community and fans. I think Ted would also be great. But I'd be just as happy. I mean, either way, we're going to win. Both would be amazing owners, are amazing owners. And honestly, I don't know anything about a rumored sale, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky in DC that we do have a bunch of really, really strong owners. Ted, something that he's been talking about a lot, he just made a new investment the other day, is women's sports, and I know that's something you're passionate about. We heard Danita talk a little bit about the Washington Spirit. Women's sports in DC, I think there's more attention to them, but there's more that could be given. What's your take?
Well, yeah, I think our community has embraced women's sports. There's a lot of great women, female athletes who come from here. Kiki Rice, tons of people who've come from here. I think our community, just by nature of like the educated nature of our community, embraces that. I think that's fantastic. For us, for the tennis tournament, when we took it over in 2019, it was a high-level men's event and kind of a medium-level women's event. And one of our priorities was to find a way to bring the higher-level women's event here. There's only one every week. The one our week was in San Jose. Had been there since the 70s. We worked really hard, and I was really proud that 3 years ago we brought it to DC. So now it's the only combined 500 level event in the world, and one of only 10 tournaments in the world that men and women play together at the same time. And one of the things I love about tennis is it's the only sport where men and women are playing in the same event on the same surface. So when you come to a night at the tennis tournament, you'll see a bunch of great male matches, a bunch of great female matches. And I have a son and a daughter, and I want them both to come and be inspired.
And what about equal pay?
And on equal pay, we actually agreed to have equal prize money in 2027, which is 6 years ahead of what that
Round of applause for that. That's
would
incredible.
have been. Yeah, it was, that tournament was set to have equal prize money in 2033. And the only reason, there's a reasons it's not immediate, but in 2027, it will be exactly the same.
I'm going to ask you the same one fun thing that I asked Danita, which is, as a longtime Washingtonian and somebody who's invested in this community, where's a place that you would recommend that people go? It could be a restaurant, it could be just a fun recreational spot that's accessible to everybody.
So one of the great things about the tennis tournament is that we get players from all over the world. And I will say, as a proud Washingtonian, like so many of you, I love to see how much our players love Washington, especially the Europeans. They all come and say, Washington's our favorite city. So my go-to move for them is I rent bikes and I leave them at the hotel and I leave them a map and I say, this is the way to explore the National Mall and our city is going to bike. So I gave this to Rafa Nadal and he went toward and he took selfies. He loved it. He loved the city. He posted selfies. Now he posted a picture of himself in front of the Capitol and said, look, it's the White House. And the comments were a little like, that's super cute, sweetie, but it's not. And then I'll tell you the other just story of that. So I love that. And then 2 years ago, Serena was here. She didn't play, but she practiced. Venus was playing, she practiced. And Serena called me, we've been friends forever, and she wanted to go on a scooter ride around the National Mall. So Serena and I rented Lime scooters at the Four Seasons and literally went down to the mall. You see the looks on people's faces when we did that. And Serena loved it. We go to the mall, you're going down on a scooter, and it's like the great, whether it's a bike or a scooter and seeing National Mall, it's amazing. We're literally coming back to the Four Seasons and we're scooting down the street and Andy Murray's coming the other way. And he sees me and Serena and he does a double take. He's like, I never thought I would see this. So I highly recommend bikes and scooters around the city.
I love that because I'm such a bike and scooter fan. Wow, did we learn so many incredible things. I think talking about the importance of the stadium here, yes, it's what it's going to bring to the community, but we also just don't want to miss out on bigger opportunities that are also great for the community. If you think about why we got passed up for the World Cup, part of why we got passed up for the Olympics is not having a big stadium like that, so I think that's going to be key. You said that this stadium is going to have a huge investment in the community around, but what I also love is a 30% investment in parks and green space, making sure that it's not just a concrete jungle where we're going to be putting that stadium here. You talked about what the value of being a public stadium is for the Rock Creek Tennis Park. Arthur Ashe demanding that it was in a public space is really, really memorable. Also, I love that you were a ball kid back then. Hopefully that inspired you a little bit here. Really interesting that the World Tennis Foundation is what raised the money for this, donated it to the National Park Service, the Rock Creek Tennis Park, and they just haven't had the ability to maintain it and keep it up to grade. So let's all knock on wood that hopefully that gets renovated. You said that we are very lucky. We have such great team owners in DC. And as somebody who covers sports and a lot of very messy distribution battles, looking at you in New York, it is really nice that we have great owners and a great sports culture here in DC. And then finally, great advice from Mark. If you have friends that are coming to DC, a fun, accessible thing that everyone can do is rent a bike or a scooter. Everyone, round of applause for Mark Ein. All right, everyone, don't go anywhere because we've got a bar, we've got snacks. We'd love for you to stay and hang out. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to our partners at IBM. Thank you to Chris, thank you to Danita and Mark for making this such a great night. And thank you to the folks at the F1 Arcade. We'll see you next time.